Excellent. Okay. Let me do, 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 do. Ah. Well, hey there. Looks like I'm live on the network. How about that? Hey, everybody. Let's like and share this a few places. So it's in all the usual places. Let's see. Share this over to the TWiRT page. And finally, we'll share this over to the Broadcasting Club. Okay. Good. It's shared, and I suppose it's on the YouTubes also. Is that right? Wonderful. Hey, everybody on the network. Glad you're here. We're getting ready to do This Week in Radio Tech. I am in Florida at Tampa in at WUSF, but we're not doing the show from here today. Actually, I got a chance to have a conversation with Mark Persons a couple days ago, and that's going to be our show today. Uh, Suncast is standing by at the controls. He's going to get us started in a couple of minutes. And Suncast, did you want me to do all the talking, or did you want to jump in and say howdy?
I can do whatever you want.
Got a camera?
I do not.
Oh, okay. We hear your voice though.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, I've gotten a great tour here at WUSF, and again, today's show is not from WUSF, but by golly, it should be. I need to come back down here. Dave Anderson is. What's your title, Dave? He's the chief engineer here at WUSF. Dave's been on the show several times before. He thinks twice. I think maybe three times. Dave is going to be our guest in a few weeks at some point, whenever he'll agree to do it. He's got quite a story to tell about some FM antennas and uh, projects and avoiding disaster. Just dodged a bullet, figuratively, not literally. Um, so that'll be coming up in a few weeks. But Dave has a facility here that he is rebuilding, and it is beautiful. He does so many engineering things just right that it's really worth looking at and learning from. Oh my goodness! So I got to come back, and we got to do a show from here. Although that may be, I don't know, sometime. We should do that in January. We should do that when it's cold in Nashville. We should come visit Dave here in Tampa. Dave, when it's cold in Nashville, I'm gonna come and we'll take a camera through your tech room. Okay. All right. I'm excited. I'm excited about that. All right. Can I bring the family? Okay. All right. Good deal. Well, it's almost time for us to start. We're 30 seconds away. Hey, I want to put in a say that the usual things. If you enjoy watching or listening to This Week in Radio Tech, would you please hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube? If you're not on YouTube, hey, jump over there and find This Week in Radio Tech and hit that subscribe button. That does help out. If you want to comment on any of the shows on the YouTube page, that'd be great. I think the comments are available there. If not, let me know and ring the bell so that you can be notified when a new episode is up. That surely helps us out. The other thing that really helps us out and helps keep the show going is if you will let our advertisers know that, hey, we hear your message, we're considering your product, or maybe we're not considering your product, maybe you should change a product, but anyway, give some feedback to the advertisers on the show. Man, that does help, and I really appreciate it. We do this. I do this because I love it. We also do it a little bit to pay the bills it costs to make and distribute the show. I got to pay Suncast. I got to pay Chris Tarr, and I got to pay me too a little bit. So anyway, anything you can do to help us out in that regard, it is very much appreciated. Okay. It is 5 o'clock on the East Coast, 4 o'clock in Nashville. And so we're going to hear from Mark Persons here in just a moment. We'll give a second of dead air, a black video, and then Suncast will get us going. You guys have a great time and enjoy the show.
Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, Mark Persons joins us talking about mentoring and about a recent article that Mark wrote for Radio World. But more importantly, we're talking about what's happening to the AM band, and it's getting into the ham bands, and it's a problem. And is there anything we can do about it? That's coming up next on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store, with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics, with the Bionic Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. By Nautel, worry-free transmission you can count on with outstanding control, reliability, efficiencies, and Nautel's unmatched 24/7 customer support. Online at nautel.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to that light bulb there from the top of the tower. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. Delighted to be here. We got a fun show today. It's going to be one of those interesting shows where we find out stuff that we normally don't talk about. A little history, a little behind-the-scenes engineering work. And, Mark Persons is our guest. I'll introduce him in a minute. I don't need to say more. You're going to love the show. We got some great pictures to show, too. And some advice on keeping healthy, even here in this semi-post-COVID world. Mark's got a great piece of advice for us. I'm in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee. If you are watching us on the usual Thursday, it's going to be Thursday, September the 8th for this show. We actually pre-recorded this because I am in Tampa, Florida on September 8th. So Mark and I said, let's get together and record the show a little bit early. Chris Tarr may amble along later. He is handling an emergency right now. So let's go ahead and bring in our guest. It is Mark Persons. Hey, Mark, welcome in. Good to see you.
Great to be here. Always fun to be on your show, Kirk.
I'm delighted that you're here. You're a fun guest to have. And with so many decades of experience in broadcast engineering, you kind of bring a nice perspective into stuff and let us know what's really important and what we may be able to let by the wayside, which is probably none of it.
Yeah, I've gotten into mentoring broadcast engineers. I don't get a penny for it, but it feels so good to do that, to help others.
Gotcha. Well, we're going to take a look at some of your mentoring activities and the fact that you were, you wrote an article in Radio World. We're going to get to that in a second. I got to get a real quick announcement in front of everybody, and that is this. Nautel. Nautel has restarted after a brief summer respite, well, actually a month or so, their Transmission Talk Tuesday discussions. I need to bring that word into my lexicon. Discussions. They are discussions. If you'll go to nautel.com/webinars, like you're seeing on the screen right now, you'll see this page of different things that you can take advantage of at nautel.com/webinars. And one of them is the Transmission Talk Tuesday discussions. If you'll go there and click on it, well, you can sign up for this month's discussions. Oh, they've added one at the end of the month here on the 27th. So we have one coming up on Tuesday, September 13th, Repair or Replace, How to Decide. You can register now for that one. Tuesday, September 20th, Getting Ready for Winter. Register now for that one. And then Tuesday, September 27th, Proudly Made in Maine. I'm not sure if they're talking about caribou or, probably transmitters. Maybe we'll get a factory tour. I don't know. But these are discussions. They're not webinars, even though I know you go to nautel.com/webinars to get there. But just go sign up. And you know what? If you just click the register now and you start signing up, if you've signed up before, it'll probably pre-fill your form. So it becomes really quick and easy. They'll send you an email a day in advance and another one about an hour in advance to remind you of the Transmission Talk Tuesday discussions. So check that out at nautel.com/webinars. And there's plenty of other resources at nautel.com that you can take advantage of. You do get SBE recertification credit when you attend the Transmission Talk Tuesday discussions. So be sure you do that. I really appreciate Nautel sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech and letting me remind you to go to their Transmission Talk Tuesday discussions. They're roundtables. If you need to ask a question or you want to ask a question of their guests or of Jeff Welton, the host, you can easily do that. All right, Mark Persons is right back with us here. Mark, you're coming to us from, looks like your wonderful, beautiful home and office in Minnesota.
Brainerd, Minnesota, right.
Yeah.
So we built, this is our second generation of real offices in a home. One entire floor was the office and shop. Another floor is for living, about 2,000 square feet for each.
Wow, that's a big place. We've talked about that a little bit before on some previous episodes. You've got this picture to show us on the front of the magazine. What do you got to show us there?
Okay, recently made front page of Radio World.
Nice,
and it was about mentoring. I mentioned that the other day. I'm the handsome guy with the white hair pointing to a young guy, John Loven, about things to work on and how to do it right rather than making a mistake and having to go back and fix it later.
Mentoring. Are there other industries that engage in this the way we do or we try to in broadcast engineering?
I don't know, but it's so dearly needed. And I was mentoring before the Society of Broadcast Engineers had a program for that.
Oh.
And they're a wonderful program. SBE does it. And by the way, the mentoring article I wrote had mentioned SBE big time, and for good reason, because it is a wonderful way to do it. If I don't have an answer to a question from a mentee, which happens, I refer that person to another mentor in the SBE program. He gets the answer. Later on, I find out the answer too, so I learn something from the whole deal.
If you're the article that Mark is talking about is this one from Radio World, and it was published back on July 25th, so just a little over a month ago. Your mentorship matters. What's the gist of the article here that you wrote?
Well, basically, and don't get too far down there. Did you notice that in a recent article of the magazine, it described broadcast engineers as gods of the machines?
Oh.
Because you really need to know what's going on, and it takes people with knowledge to make all of that happen. So basically, I just laid out the program of how a mentor works with a mentee.
Now you said don't scroll too far down. You don't want to show your picture?
Oh, that was the gods of the machine.
Oh, gotcha.
Which I thought was a wonderful quote.
Now I want to point out that Mark is shown here in his shop, and his shop is closed. Now it's only a prop, a studio prop.
Is that so? Well, this is from when I was still a working guy. You'll see a BE exciter on the bench. You'll see an oscilloscope, audio analyzer, audio oscillator, modulation monitor, frequency monitor, and a spectrum analyzer.
Yep.
And I've kept all those tools because I'm still writing for Radio World, and just doing things like that. Many of the tools I sold off, but the basic shop I kept.
Well, and it makes for good props if you need to open it back up to take a photo.
That was me when I was young and handsome when I was still working.
What do you look? I know we got other topics to jump into, but you're officially retired, and nobody wanted to see that, but maybe you, and I'm probably Paula, your wife. But what do you do with all your time now? Let me guess, you're busier than ever, right?
You remember the story? I should go back to work because I'm so busy in my retirement that I don't have time to do anything, and it's true.
Really?
I am donating my time to the veterans of foreign wars, to you name it, I'm doing it. And the mentoring, the whole business. It just fills my day, and I don't get a penny for it, but it's a good thing. And it's a good thing for my brain, too. And Paula mentioned it early on that I should retire while I was on top, because I've noticed that I'm not quite the engineer that I used to be. And so I'm hiding it well. Let's put it that way.
I've noticed that too, that I'm not quite the engineer I used to be. Like, especially when I climb down off of a tower.
And I've done some of that too, and continue to do that in my amateur radio hobby.
You're not, by the way, hearkening back to a previous episode, you're not still climbing the curtains, are you?
Curtain. Oh, you know that story.
You told it.
Oh, yes, yes, of course. Well, it was actually pipes for the heating system
Oh,
for the
okay,
house.
okay.
But I was all of 4 years old, and heights have never bothered me. So it was just a part of growing up.
Hey, let's jump into a few of the things you wanted to talk about. We've got some serious topics coming up. We have a small matter here we'd like to talk about, and that is a friend of the industry, a real pioneer in the industry, and that was Jim Lupus. What do you want to tell us about Jim?
And I knew him from NAB conventions, but I just kind of knew him. So I was out in California in 1991. Oh, Jim died at 83, by the way, recently in Texas. But I was out in California and I was building a station, K-Pop on 540, 10 kilowatts day, 500 watts night, backed up into the hills, and it just pushed its signal across Carmel Valley big time and was heard in Hawaii on the beach with a transistor radio. I mean, the signal was that good, and propagation across saltwater is just excellent for AM. So anyway, what happened was I was in California, and since I was doing AM stereo installations for Motorola, they said, well, would you go down to LA and install stereo on a station there? So I got there, and guess who was there? Jim Lupus. He and I went out to dinner. We had a wonderful time, and that's how it cemented our relationship. So we just got along famously after that. But the interesting part is the station I installed it on was KKHJ.
Oh,
but I knew it as KHJ. Because our family had lived in LA 1959 to 1960, 9:30 a.m., 5 kilowatts day and night, a very loose 3-tower pattern at night, no big deal. But as a pre-teen or just becoming a teen, there I was tuning across the AM dial because there was no FM back then, and listening to that station. Little did I know that I'd be there years ago installing stereo. Now, in my mind, it held another set of call letters, KRTH, and then I mentioned KKHJ. But what a lousy idea to move away from a 3-letter heritage call, KHJ. So more recently, they got it back, and they should never let it go again.
Just a little point of trivia, you know where the call letters KKHJ are now?
I do not.
They're in American Samoa, and you're looking at one of the owners.
Oh, there you go.
How about that?
So,
and I think the statute of limitations is out, but we're actually using the Johnny Mann Singers 93 KHJ jingles because we're 93.1 FM. There.
I see.
Yeah.
So you left out the 9:30 a.m. part.
Yeah, exactly. 93 KHJ. Yep. How about that? Oh my goodness. Wow. And okay. And by the way, another connection with Jim Lupus is that Jim Lupus and Frank Foti were good friends, and Frank Foti, Telos Alliance, the Omnia brand, has picked up some years ago rights to some of the intellectual property held in the Air Core mic processing.
Yeah, and that was the Jim Lupus thing, and he did marvelous job with microphone processors in studio, the de-essing and all of that. So I'm glad it continues. So
you wanted to chat about something about AM coverage. Do you want to get into that now, or is there something else you wanted to hit first?
Oh, that's fine. Oh, I should mention first that I normally wear glasses, but I'm nearsighted. But when I wear them in this venue, there's a lot of reflections. For some reason, it doesn't happen with you, but it happens with my glasses. So that's because they're really thick Coke bottle bottom glasses.
I see mine will reflect a little. I paid extra for the anti-glare.
Is that what you
coating,
have?
Yeah.
So anyway, do you know Dick Witkowski?
I know the name, and I'm sure I've met Dick.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
He used to sell Besco transmitters, that kind of thing.
Okay.
When he was a young man, he didn't need glasses, but he was told by some knowledgeable person to go get some glasses that are just plain ordinary glass.
Okay.
And the reason was because he would look more studious, and therefore he looks more like an engineer. So they would buy from him the transmitters or cart machines or whatever he was selling because he looked the part.
All glasses ever did for me was make me look like a nerd. I got some fashionable glasses finally about 3 months ago.
I see.
But, yeah.
So I should tell you what's going on in my life. You must know Tom King. Kintronics.
Oh, yeah, that we wanted to mention Tom. Yes, Kintronics is here in the state that I live, although it's about as far away as you can get.
As you can get.
Up in Bristol, the Bristol area, yeah.
Okay. And he and I are about the same age, and we both had fathers in broadcasting, so to speak, who both passed away since, and now Tom and I both have gray hair or no hair, but we're still great friends. And I've got to give him kudos for trying to keep his business going. Kintronics is an AM radio-based parts supplier, and he's really working hard at it. And he somehow got me into helping him figure out some of the things. I'll give you for instance. Years ago, back in the 70s, I used to listen to WCCO radio, 830 AM in Brainerd, Minnesota. 0.5, that's half a millivolt per meter signal. And in the house, ordinary handheld transistor radio worked wonderfully.
And just in case there are some younger people watching or listening to this podcast, you just said 0.5 millivolts per meter. That's how we measure the strength of a signal at a given location. What is 0.5 millivolts per meter? What does that kind of mean in the range of signal strengths?
It means fringe area coverage, or it used to. Mm-hmm. And in a car, it's pretty good. It's where radio stations based their coverage years ago. Now, you can't think in those terms anymore. Think in terms of 2 millivolts per meter or more. Now, that's 4 times the signal strength to get the same usable signal at the receiver. And most of it has to do with switching power supplies.
Well, let me jump back to a midpoint there in the logic. Back in the 1950s and 60s, we didn't have nearly as much electronics, and we didn't have the kind of electronics in our homes that made electrical noise. We may not hear with our ears a power supply for our laptop or a charger for our Tesla. We may not hear those things operating, but they're making electrical noise. And I know the FCC has rules about that, but they seem pretty lax either in the rule level or the enforcement thereof. And so what's happened is the noise level of the radio spectrum has risen, but radio stations are still the same power they used to be.
Still the same. And I equate that to somewhere between 10 and 20 decibels, which means that the signal is either 1/10 or 1/100th readable at the same field intensity that it was back in the day. So AM just doesn't have it anymore. And guess what? Every one of these smartphones, well, it has a charger, and every one of those chargers is a switching power supply. We never had switching power supplies before. We had what's called linear power supplies, created no extra noise. But these things, they're very efficient, which is great. They keep the voltage exactly where you want it, which is great. But in the process, they can put out hash in the AM, especially radio bands. And we're starting to understand that some of these devices put out radio noise right up to VHF where FM is and beyond.
Wow. And I would point out that if there's a lot of noise, like in the FM band, well, the way FM works, that noise has to be really strong before it really starts interfering with our listenability. Just as you hear lightning crashes off in the distance as a storm approaches, we know that electrical noise in the AM band area affects directly our listening to AM, because it's picking up, electrical noise like that. Whereas FM, I wouldn't say cheats, but it uses a method of transmission and reception that is more, not completely, but more immune to that kind of noise. But AM, boy, it picks it right up, and there it is.
What we're seeing, though, is a cumulative effect of these power supplies. Little bit here, little bit there. Even if they're FCC legal, the thousands of them that are, well, hundreds. You might have 100 in your home. You don't even know it. And every little thing you plug in has these switching power supplies. Well, it all degrades the RF spectrum.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So anyway, Tom King has asked me to help him study RF noise sources. So I'm going out and I'm looking at solar power systems, and we're going to be looking at noises that cars make. Well, car manufacturers have that pretty well figured out for keeping the noise down to AM radios in those cars. But now we're getting into electric vehicles, and they're using switching power supplies. And those things are very difficult to tame down. And so I've got a spectrum analyzer, and I thought, well, I'll go out to my car, raise the hood, put a probe in the engine, see where the noise is coming from, a little antenna, that kind of thing. And then I thought, well, I'll do the same thing with a Tesla. You can't do that with a Tesla. There is no engine under the hood.
In a Tesla, are the electronics very distributed throughout the vehicle? Are they concentrated in one general area?
I don't know. Some of them are one-wheel drive, some are two or more. So each one of those drives probably has its own inverter to make it run. I don't know. I'm just starting to learn that.
Interesting. Mark, I would not have believed it unless I checked it myself, but many home routers will tell you how many devices are attached, or certainly they'll tell you how many IP addresses they've handed out.
Sure.
I've got my I forget how I do it. I can find out how many Wi-Fi devices are attached to I have a commercial Wi-Fi access point here in the house because it provides more reliable coverage. And in my house, here at Harnack House in Nashville, Tennessee, I've got 61 Wi-Fi devices attached to the Wi-Fi.
Wow!
I could not believe it. But between all the laptops and the tablets and the kids, the grandkids stuff that's here, the Ring video doorbell, I've got 3 or 4 or 5 Wise cameras spread around. Got one couple on the bird feeders, and supposed to be bird feeders. They're really squirrel feeders, unfortunately.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
And phones. We put our phones on the Wi-Fi when we're in the house, and it's unbelievable.
Now, the next toaster you buy will have an IoT in it, Internet of Things.
Yeah.
And it will be just one more device that'll want to attach onto the internet, and it gets its power from, guess what? A switching power supply. They can be clean, but it's easy for the manufacturers to leave a few parts out, and then they're electronically dirty.
And I would think that something as big as a Tesla or other power-hungry device that's using switching supplies, that filtering that would even at that level reduce the efficiency slightly. Because typically filters, will involve a little bit of heat. They'll be trapping some harmonics and such. They'll be rejecting that kind of thing. So there's a little bit of energy there, maybe a lot of energy there. Certainly in broadcast transmitters, we put a low pass filter on an FM. It gets hot.
Yeah, good point. Now then the car manufacturer has to make a decision. AM radio or efficiency.
Yeah.
Ouch. I haven't quite gotten that far, but I can see that as a possibility.
I know we've heard that the engineers at BMW have decided that, well, the AM radio is the thing that has to go.
It went away in Europe, but it's still here in the United States.
Okay. All right.
So BMW is in Europe, and I can see the reasoning behind that.
Look, there's a whole philosophical discussion as to, look, in 50 years from now, will AM even matter? Well, I don't know. I don't know. So, to me, it doesn't seem likely that it will, but yes, I romanticize AM radio just like most of us in radio do, but I don't know if it's got a place in the long-term future.
And you have to realize that technology turns over with time, and just like what they've done in Europe, they've eliminated AM. We've hung on to it here. It's still profitable in many cases. I know of 2 500-watt daytime AM radio stations that are actually making a living in Minnesota.
Well, I lost everything I had years ago in that buggy whip business that I had.
Oh,
yeah, that went by the wayside, and
so I suppose eventually it will, but we should let it die its normal death. Let's not create a problem, and we should certainly make the find out what's violating FCC rules, and what we should do is make them make rules. The truth is, we don't need new FCC rules. What we need is enforcement of the existing rules.
And you know what? Just not to get into politics, but man, you hear that about all kinds of topics these days. We already have the rules if we just enforce them. So. Hey, friends, we're talking to Mark Persons. He is talking about mentoring, or he wrote an article recently about mentoring. We got more topics coming up about AM broadcasting, about FCC rules, about things that we're looking at to make the AM world better. Batteries and a battery box, that's coming up, and we've got pictures to share too. But right now, I want to show you and tell you how you can maybe do a better job of creating the content, whether it goes on AM or FM or streams. We got content to make. That's what we do in broadcasting, and Broadcast Bionics can be a big part of that.
Welcome to the Bionic Studio. The Bionic Studio brings all audience interaction to the fingertips of a production team in radio, TV, and podcast. Our workflow-led system is working 24/7 around the world for small broadcasters and national and international networks. Our telephony module, Bionic Talk Show, allows cost-effective centralization, remote operation, scalability, and resilience across an entire network of stations, but at the same time is used in single-studio self-op environments. Social media curation and activity is now considered a broadcast-critical part of programming. Bionic Social means the studio isn't overwhelmed with a wall of interaction from an ever-growing number of social platforms. We combine SMS, MMS, and email together with a speech-to-text service for listeners using smart speakers. We enable studio teams to curate, filter, and display all platforms in one place, and post text, images, and video content to multiple platforms in one operation. Effortless collection of video content with Bionic Director has helped position some of the world's most successful stations as leaders in viral content, generating appointments to listen and free marketing via retweets and shares. Bionic Contest enables end-to-end tracking of on-air competitions, live reads, and prizes. These can be on-air contests, automated SMS entry, or online. Anywhere, and Skype TX for Radio brings high-quality audio and video contribution into the studio with ease. No need for dedicated PCs to run different applications. Everything is controlled within the Bionic Studio UI, and incoming connections are visible to users along with all other platforms. Our codec integration enables connection, algorithm configuration, and directory to a wide range of IP and ISDN codecs. The Bionic Studio, a unique suite of products designed to enable your talent to work smarter.
And thanks to the Bionics Studio at Broadcast Bionics for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. As you can see, there are a lot of things that you can do to make your content better, make it easy for your talent to have access to the information that they need, and to make quick video clips to put on social media and streaming to help promote your station, your brand, and share the excitement of what your listeners are experiencing with your station. Check it out from Broadcast Bionics. Thanks a lot. All right, we're talking to Mark Persons today about AM radio and other things. Mark, where did you want to go next? We want to at some point get to that Hamnet meeting that you had.
Yeah, I would say that's a good next point. Paula and I are amateur radio operators. If you can bring up figure 1.
Yeah, let's see here. Oh yeah, hang on one second. I've got it. I want to make sure it looks good, and there we go.
Okay. The handsome guy in the back is me, and that's the other one is Paula. And this is our amateur radio station. Now, I should tell you that amateur radio is not CB radio. It is licensed by the Federal Communications Commission. You can't buy a license into amateur radio. You have to exam into it. So we're in the amateur extra class, which requires at least 4 hours of examinations to get there. And you don't do bad things on the air, because if you do, you could lose your license. Now, on the back wall there, you see QSL cards. These are confirmation of contacts with other stations. You'll notice like W6TC. But where does that come from? Well, it's all a part of the international database of call signs. For instance, you have KHJ in Los Angeles, you have WCCO radio, all of the above. And then for amateur radio, there's usually a letter or two, followed by a number, the district in the United States, followed by some more letters. And if it's a station from Canada, it begins with VE. If it's in Mexico, it begins with X. In Britain, it begins with a G. It's a full international call sign directory for every transmitter in the world. And that even includes cell phones. You don't know what it is, but the people who sell you the phones, they have the numbers or the call signs.
Yeah. A quick question on that. When I took my first test, my technician class test, I lived in Mississippi at the time, so my call sign is KD5FYD. Now, if you heard KD5FYD off the top of your head, would that tell you anything?
Well, it would tell you where you are in the United States. Now, that's changed recently, where you could have a 5 in Minnesota if you wanted to. But, just like the W's for broadcast stations used to be east of the Mississippi, and the K's were west. Well, now it's everywhere. I don't know if it's dumbing down of the world or what, but they're letting everything go by.
Okay, all right.
So here we are at the amateur radio station that's fully capable of talking to stations in Russia or England or whatever when the conditions are right. There's the gray box on the right is a 1,000 watt linear amplifier, fully legal, exactly what hams do. Now, this is the station that one Saturday morning I was on, as I do every Saturday morning, to say hi to my friends around the 5-state area on 75 meters, which is about 3.9 megahertz. And we operate a single sideband, which is another mode like FM, AM. Well, it's similar to AM, but it's more efficient. Okay. So I turn on the radio this Saturday morning, and all I hear is just noise all over the dial. So the net, the group of guys, the half a dozen or 10 guys I was supposed to say hi to, I couldn't hear any of them, but I knew they were there because I could just barely hear something. So what do? I grab a portable transistor radio and start walking around outside the house, out near my antennas, and wander over to the neighbor's property, and there it is. The highest noise was coming out of his garage. So I got permission to go into the garage, and I found it's probably figure 2 somewhere in there.
I think it is. Does it look like that?
So, okay. Battery charger. This is a smart battery charger.
Oh, it's very smart. Yes.
Very smart. And I put it near the spectrum analyzer with just a short little, what's called a rubber ducky antenna.
Mhm.
And if you look at the analyzer, it starts at near zero and goes up to 60 megahertz. So this thing just created all kinds of noise spikes all the way up to 60 megahertz. So, and there's some more slides to go with this one.
Yeah, let's see what else we got here next.
Okay. So I looked at the circuit card, and it's one of those little switching power supplies, and you can see that this little card is handling all of the current from that huge toroidal transformer behind it. So it's got to be really efficient or it'll get hot. And there's probably one more slide.
Yeah.
Some poor attempt to keep the RF from escaping the unit. The power cord or the 12-volt cables that go to the battery, they make wonderful antennas for taking this unwanted radiation. It's unintentional, it's called, and just sending it out through an antenna like that. So I got a hold of Ed Hare, W1RFI. Get this, RF interference.
RFI, yes.
I think he got that call sign just when he got the job. You see, you can change call signs just like you can change when, like, broadcast stations can change theirs. But don't ever give up KHJ. That's a bad choice.
And by the way, for those who don't know, RFI in our business stands for radio frequency interference.
Radio frequency interference.
Yeah.
So he's lab manager over at the American Radio Relay League. They're the big international association for our group, just like you have NAB. Well, these people are the ham radio people of the world. So he analyzed it and found out, sure enough, it doesn't make FCC specs. So he's working on a complaint to send in to the FCC. He's done this on a couple of previous occasions, and just as he's about to send the complaint in, the unit that he was complaining about is withdrawn from the market.
Oh.
And then what can the FCC do if the item isn't on the market?
Now I don't know if we want to name names or anything, but I was looking here at this at the name on this thing.
Yeah, don't.
Minn Kota?
I hope nobody finds that one out. Anyway, the point is that's the kind of issues that us amateur radio guys are facing. And there's another one. The government is asking for and more or less mandating more efficient furnaces. Great idea. How do you get a more efficient furnace? You have a variable speed motor in it.
Just like our engines in our cars these days, gasoline, internal combustion engines. Now there's computers that run everything, that run the amount of air, the amount of fuel, the timing they can adjust for all kinds of conditions. Is the air humid coming in? Is the air dry coming in? What does the air weigh? We have these mass, what do you ever call them? The things that measure the amount of air coming in. Not just the speed of the air, not just the wind speed, but the mass of the air. And so, what's the load on the engine? What are we asking the engine to do? And all these things combined in a computer to get the most efficiency out of the engine. Well, that desire for efficiency and computer control has now moved into, as you were just telling me, furnaces.
And bless them for cars. I remember when starting a car engine in the wintertime was a real chore.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter anymore. You just push the button and boom, it starts.
Yeah.
They know how to do that. Well, anyway, the latest thing with furnaces is variable speed fans. They can ramp them up and ramp them down to get the greatest efficiency out of the furnace. They do that with switching power supplies, variable speed for the variable speed drives. Many of them are causing problems for amateur radio operators, just slaughtering the amateur radio bands, which start, well, there's actually one slightly below the AM broadcast band. And the next highest one starts at about 1.8 megahertz, and they're space little chunks of the spectrum that go right up to light. So we're experimenting with all those things. Amateur radios, people have been well known in the past for actually doing the research work, the the trying this and trying that and thinking their way through these problems that winds up as a commercial product someday. Anyway, we're facing those kinds of noise makers.
We know that these problems, and we could, a lot of us engineers could see these problems coming literally 20 years ago when little wall wart power supplies and line lump power supplies and the switch mode power supplies were coming along, and when they started building them for the highest possible value, right? Darn the rules. We're going to make this thing cheap and we're going to sell a lot of them. But we know the problem's getting solved because if you watch Star Trek, they never have, an interference problem from within the ship unless it's an alien. I mean, like, they never go investigate Lieutenant Uhura's cabin to see if she's got a wall wart plugged in that's gone berserk. Right?
Okay, got it.
So we know that this gets solved.
But back in the day, there was no such thing. And oh, by the way, the difference between a traditional wall wart or wall power supply and one from today is the original ones were kind of bulky and heavy.
Yeah, they were.
Today's, they're half the size, weigh 1/4 the amount, and it's inside there, a little switching power supply. They don't have a heavy power transformer anymore.
I'm glad you said that. The wall wart for my, I don't know, Atari or Amiga or whatever game that we had back in high school, that was so heavy it'd fall out of the wall plug. Yeah, you plug it in, it'd fall right back out. So we know that.
Yeah.
Hey, we got some. So where do you think we can go with this? How can we reduce noisemakers? And haven't the horses already left the barn in this regard?
I'm sorry to report it really has left the barn, but if we can get enough reports of items that don't meet existing FCC rules and regulations, Part 15 for unintentional radiators, maybe the FCC can respond. So Tom King is a good guy to send information to. You can send it to me, Mark at mwpersons.com, and I'll do some investigating. Between Tom and I, we might come up with some answers, and I'll send it over to the American Radio Relay League. Maybe they can prompt the FCC to do something.
Wireless charging is very popular. And here's the back of my iPhone. I've got a case on it, and it has this magnetic thing right here that centers the wireless charger. And so what about wireless charging can cause problems as opposed to the normal amount of problems with a wall wart supply and wired charging?
Here's what I'm worried about. They're talking about ramping up that idea to charge vehicles wirelessly. We're talking 8 or 10 kilowatts worth of energy between something in the floor of your garage and the vehicle, which your cat or dog might walk in between and get fried maybe along the way. But this is all because people are too lazy to plug the car in, you understand. All they have to do is plug it in.
Yeah. But that's too much trouble to plug it in.
Too much trouble. And you say, they might drive away with it plugged in. No, easy. You have a little switch on there, so when it's plugged in, the car refuses to start.
Exactly.
Well, how simple is that? So you pull it out and start the car and go away. Well, I guess you don't start the car. You kind of like push the button and go, whatever it is you do with an electric car.
All right, so we're going to hear from a sponsor in a second, and Mark, I want to bring up an idea here. There are people experimenting. Well, we've had HD radio on FM around for years, also on AM. We've got a couple of these, at least one, I think maybe another one, of these all digital AM radio stations. And the people who are promoting them reporting pretty good results. I've heard recordings of these, and it sounds like streaming. And they say that their coverage area is comparable to what it was with analog. Anyway, all that. My point is this. If you've got HD radio going on the FM band, you're going to need a modulation monitor to check it out. And our friends at Innovonics have come out with a couple of really amazing mod monitors that will monitor all kinds of things about your HD radio signal. Here we are to hear about it from our friends at Broadcasters General Store and Innovonics.
Hi, this is Gary Lerman. I'm Sales and Marketing Manager from Innovonics. I'm joined here by our President and CEO, Ben Barber, and we're here to tell you about two new products that we're very excited about. They're HD modulation monitors, the model 551 and 552, and Ben's going to take us through some of the features. Ben, what can you tell us about these?
The 551 has the big display, 7-inch touchscreen display. You can look at different parameters instantly by walking up to it and touching it, getting information that you need. It also has the LED displays for FM total modulation, left, right, FM, HD 1, 2, 3, and 4. The other thing that the 551 has is that it has full-time audio outputs on Studio Hub connectors on the back, both analog as well as AES digital. So you've got FM, HD 1 through 4, they're full-time. The 552 doesn't have the display, doesn't have the metering, and doesn't have the full-time audio outputs, but the web interfaces are identical for remote viewing and monitoring.
Great, thanks very much, Ben. These products are going to be available in January 2022. Contact us at innovonicsbroadcast.com for more information. Thanks very much.
And thanks to Broadcasters, thanks to Broadcasters General Store for bringing us this. You can get Innovonics, anything Innovonics, through Broadcasters General Store. Their website is bgs.cc. bgs.cc, or call them at 352-622-7700. Hey, I'm going to be visiting with Jessica from Broadcast General Store tomorrow and Thursday as well, because I'll be in Tampa, Florida, visiting some radio stations and doing an SBE meeting in Tampa, Florida. So I look forward to spending some time with Jessica from Broadcasters General Store, and I hope that you will give them a call for whatever you need for broadcasting. They got it. All right, we're here with Mark Persons. Mark, we got a few more pictures to look at and more concepts to talk about. Anything else on the interference front right now?
Well, I'm using various instruments to look for and identify unwanted noise.
Oh,
and I think one of the next images, number 5, is some old engineers might recognize this one. A field intensity meter from the 1950s and 60s.
Now, is this the picture of the meter or the batteries?
Well, no, it's number 5. It's the meter itself.
Gotcha.
Okay.
There we go.
This one actually uses tubes. Can you believe that? Ancient evacuated devices.
Oh my goodness!
But I resurrected one of these things and cleaned it all up and checked its calibration against a currently calibrated one of those Potomac Instruments FIM 4100, something to that effect.
Uh-huh.
And darn if it didn't agree with that meter. So I was real pleased. Basically, I just need some sort of calibration to go with it. But I had some problems restoring it. And if you go on to the next slide, number 6, I'll show you that.
Oh, I've probably got.
And by the way, this covers the entire AM broadcast band.
That's not 6. That's here we go.
Okay. Okay. The original battery is the red one on the left. It's a zinc carbon cell, just the ordinary battery, 67.5 volts though. And so they're not available, not made anymore, but there's a replacement, the one on the right. Well, it's the same width and that kind of thing, but the length is different. And so you figure, oh, this is a good thing, right? Well, not necessarily, because when you go to put it in the meter, you got troubles. It wants to fall out.
Oh.
So what you see between those two white batteries is some plastic material that I found, leftover stuff in the shop, that I cut to the right size and glued in there. And there's some that you can't see that's along the bottom as well, just to keep all these batteries in place so they don't fall around in the battery box while the meter is in use. So just another one of the many things that an engineer does to make the world turn. And if you back up a little bit more, I'll show you there are 5 batteries in there. They're normal D cells. One of the D cells is for the calibrating oscillator in there, and the other 4 run the filaments in the radio, the receiver, tube receiver. It still works. If you want to replace it for a brand new one for $15,000 or more, you can do that. Or you can spend a little time and clean up the one you got, check the calibration, and then you've got yourself a meter.
Wow. Wow. Years ago, I had bought a couple of, I bought the brown one, the solid state one.
Sure.
And one of the problems that I had, Mark, was that the big variable capacitors had disintegrated to some degree.
Wow. I did not run into that. I carried one of those things around for 40 years. You must have gotten some kind of a bad production run.
It may have been all the cigar smoke that they were exposed to.
Oh, yeah. Now, I should tell you that this meter is it's a calibrated voltmeter.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so if I want to find out the signal intensity of any radio station, if you back up just a little bit,
Yeah.
after I've calibrated a little bit more, okay, the dial on the lower right shows full scale reading of whatever the meter is. So
Right.
it's on the 100 millivolt scale. So if you go to the meter, 10 on there means 100. So what we have is just a half a needle width less than 20 millivolts per meter on this particular station at this moment.
Right. Right. Yes, I used this same tube type meter myself at some radio stations. I want to say that when I was doing engineering for WPAD in Paducah, Kentucky, that this is the meter that I was handed and said, you will do your field strength readings and check your monitor points with this meter. And yeah.
Okay. So now when you say monitor points, we're talking AM directionals.
That would be an AM directional,
Okay.
yeah.
Back in the day when the first radio station went on the air, it was all non-directional because there were no other stations. But just as soon as another station wanted to go on the same frequency, even though they might have been 1 or 2 states away, they had to provide protection to the existing coverage of the first station. That's where directional antennas came in, creating a null so that you don't cause interference to that first one. Well, as time went by, you were protecting 3 and 4 stations, and wow, it got to be quite a mess. You remember the one in Carmel? I told you 10 kilowatts day, 500 watts night, with all kinds of protections on the backside. Of course, because it went in 1990, I think, 91.
Oh, a latecomer, yeah.
Yeah, so it had to fit the scheme.
Wow. And these days, a number of stations have AM stations have either turned in their license and shut off, or they have said, you know what, maintaining this directional array is too expensive. We're going to go back to non-directional and reduce our power, typically the night power, but maybe the day power as well. And but it all has to be, within the FCC rules. But one of my stations, WNIX in Greenville, Mississippi, reduced both the day and the night powers down to a very small amount, 8 watts or something. But we have an FM translator on the same tower.
So you can reduce your expenses, use the 250 watt or whatever you get with an FM translator. And so that's keeping the AM band alive. I'm not thinking that was a good choice to go with translator. Sure, a lot of stations are benefiting from it, but quite frankly, it's really filled up the FM band. Show me a channel available on the FM band.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, I was always been a huge proponent of taking channel 6 from the TV band and making that into more of the FM band. But
and I love the idea. When we went to digital, they should have just expanded the FM right down to the bottom of 6. It would have been great. Of course, now we've got Frankens in there. You probably heard about those.
Sure, Franken FMs.
The FMs that were on the audio carrier frequency for Channel 6 TV. What an interesting idea. I can't believe they'd allow it and not shut them down. But that's me.
So I'm not sure what else we want to chat about. One thing that I'd like to get a little bit of education on here. We talked a bit about these switching power supplies versus linear power supplies, and I guess I'd like to get a little bit of a lesson in that. And when I got into the business, a few years after you did, most of the power supplies we dealt with were linear supplies, and that meant there was a big transformer in the
heavy.
piece of gear. Heavy transformer, lots of windings, and then the output of that would go feed some circuitry on a board, usually to turn the AC from the transformer into pulsating DC, and then from there into smooth DC, and then maybe even regulated DC.
Yeah, it would go through a transistor to drop the voltage, but there was no radio interference created. It all just happened at DC and 60 hertz. It was just all clean stuff, no problem.
So why did so many industries, anything with a power supply in it, which is almost every piece of electronic gear, what has led to the rise of switch mode or switching power supplies?
Well, first of all, you get very reliable output voltage from them, and a very small one can give you high current, and the voltages are just regulated just right to the 100th of a volt. So technically, they're marvelous units, 1/4 the size of what they would be, and 1/4 is heavy, and they work, except for when it comes to keeping the RF spectrum clean. And they can be clean if they put enough parts in there to do that. Now, Ed Hare told me that he has found examples. This is the man from the American Radio Relay League. He said he found examples of how when power supplies go to Europe, they have all the parts in them to keep them clean, because over there, they're much more careful, okay? The same unit comes to the United States missing 3 parts. It's cheaper. The filtering is gone.
Okay.
And he's actually seen where you open it up, and there's the circuit card with the capacitor and inductors listed on the card, which aren't there. It's just printed there.
Yeah.
They go here, insert component here, which isn't there.
My goodness. I don't know. I'm sorry, but I have a pessimistic view about this getting solved. I don't see the FCC being terribly interested in this unless a bad power supply terribly affected an FCC commissioner.
How about this one?
All right.
When it finally reaches the cellular band, all heck is going to break loose.
Yeah. Why doesn't my cell phone work? Well, because, maybe so.
Now, it's got a long ways to go, because we're talking several gigahertz, which is less affected by all of this. But, the FCC wants to help the AM. They got the AM improvement, whatever you call it. Well, they could have started with following and enforcing the rules.
I don't know, Mark. This is a show where we can talk frankly. We don't have to be all I just see it at the FCC as paying a lot of lip service and doing a little bit here and there around the edges. But I just don't see that anything all that serious has been done to improve the AM band. I think that the FCC commissioners just say, look, what can we do to make them happy and go away? We've got bigger things like selling off TV frequencies to worry about right now.
Yeah, I could see that. But, AM coverage or the band allocation is based on those half millivolt contours, which are totally unusable.
Yeah.
So the rules say you have to do the proper protections and all that kind of stuff. But in practice, it doesn't work anymore.
I have to wonder if 50 years from now, could we find a much better use for the frequencies now used for the AM broadcast band?
I could see eventually the AM broadcast band will go away.
But could it be used for something else? I don't know.
Yeah,
of course, if it's loaded with interference, then maybe not.
I don't perceive a use for it. It's what can you do with it? And by the way, it's only megahertz and a half wide.
Yeah.
But it covers slightly over a megahertz and a half.
Yeah.
But which is really tiny. If you look at the cellular bands, they're working with hundreds of megahertz wide to get data through. Well, you can't transmit that much data on the AM broadcast band. Now, bless them, it's 100-year-old technology. All these AMs are doing their 100th anniversary and all that kind of stuff. And it's been profitable for all those years. It's just slowly coming to an end.
Well, yeah, don't know where it's going to go. I think that if you have an AM license, I think the FCC ought to find you Spectrum. And it should have been Channel 6 for you to migrate to.
Well, I had another one. Should have picked a channel around 500 megahertz and created a digital band and it has known range like 30, 40 miles. So you could repeat that in the next community down the road. You could reuse those frequencies.
Oh yeah, gotcha.
The problem is, and it would be digital probably, and there'd be a whole bunch of channels going through one transmitter at 500 megahertz. You'd all share a single transmitter, and then the problem is that what about the stations that have paid millions for existing frequencies? AM and FM frequencies. They paid a lot of money for them, and now they have to compete with a digital band that probably sounds better than FM.
Well, of course, all those AM broadcasters, that some of which paid millions, are already competing with FM and HD and everything that comes in on this device.
Sure.
And then the car dashboard, all the streaming available there. So I don't mean to be a negative ninny, but I think at some point you face the music and you say, look, we need to move on. I don't have a solution, but it's a good thing that our stations in Mississippi and Arkansas and Hawaii and American Samoa, it's a good thing we're not depending on our AM transmissions to feed our families.
And a number of AM station licenses have been turned in.
Sure.
I don't know of any FM that's been turned in, but it might have happened.
Mark's
point is,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, as I was saying, it's a known thing that the AM band is being slowly vacated.
Mark, speaking of, let me get a picture up here so we can all take a look at it. Speaking of boards that aren't fully populated, you won't find that on this device. This, if I can hold it correctly, this is called the Mic Drop Gizmo. It's from our friends at Angry Audio, and you drill a round hole in your countertop, and you drop this down into it, and it screws in, so it looks nice and neat. Nobody knows there's a round hole under there. It looks like you knew what you were doing in your countertop, and it has, I know it's hard to see on this, but it has a female XLR connector there. Let me put this up full screen from their website, and you can see there's the Mic Drop Gizmo. Now, okay, so fine. It's got a female XLR connector on there. And on the back side, the part you can't see, it's got a male XLR connector. It also has an RJ45 connector to bring you power or remote control. But what does the red button do? Well, it can do a couple of things. It can be a cough button, and it's a really properly designed cough button. You push that button, and you won't get a click or a pop, even if you're using a condenser mic. And that's actually kind of a challenge. You may think that's easy. Nope. I had it explained to me by the designer of this, Mike Dosh, why you can't just put a short across that because this is a mic circuit, and it's being amplified enormously. Well, that button can be configured as a cough button, so it shuts your mic off, or it can even be configured as a push-to-talk button. So it's pretty smart. The Mic Drop Gizmo is just, there's what you need to install it, a hole saw. 2 1/8 inch hole saw will get this thing installed and will make you look like a carpentry professional by doing that. The Mic Drop Gizmo from our friends at Angry Audio. It's just, they make a lot of really cool little things for your studio to make it look pretty. Hey, I've been to some studios lately that incorporate a number of the products from Angry Audio, and they look great. They do so many smart things around your studio. Now, talked about that. We'll go to their website, angryaudio.com. Let me go to the homepage here so I can get myself off the screen for a second. Come on now, let's do that and bring that up full screen, angryaudio.com. They also have things like the headphone disconnector, no more broken headphone jacks. They also have things to level your audio, just lots of cool stuff from Angry Audio. AngryAudio.com. Thanks a lot for sponsoring our show, Angry Audio, Mike Dosh. Hey, also, I want to talk to you about this. Let me get it ready to go here. This Max Connect wireless thing. You know, we so often we need some internet at the transmitter site, or maybe at a parade location, or maybe you're doing a remote broadcast from a farm supply store out on the edge of town, and you've got really bad cell service out there. Well, this box right here will help you out, because this is a 4G modem, but it's not any 4G modem. The SIM cards inside there get you on a network from Max Connect Wireless that gets you priority data, and you get a fixed IP address, so you can get into your gear from the outside. Let's hear what Gary Morrill has to say about this.
I'm Gary Morrill, Midwest Regional Director of Engineering for Alpha Media. When I first spoke with Josh Bone about Max Connect, he told me they'd work great for remote transmitter sites where connectivity was a challenge. And he's absolutely right. We even have sites where we're using this as a backup to our STL using Max Connect's dual carrier option, and it works perfectly. We also have times where we need to be able to get out to a venue where it's kind of challenging because everybody and his brother is trying to stream video at the same time, like at a big sporting event. And you know what? Our data gets through every time because it's prioritized packet data. It works for us. It'll work for you. Max Connect. Check it out.
Hey, I can hold mine up just like Gary was. The Max Connect modem, they have different brands of modems, actually, different features, different brands. Some have one SIM card. This one happens to have two SIM cards in it, so this one will connect either Verizon or AT&T Wireless, whoever's got the best signal. It's prioritized packet data for you with a fixed IP address from Max Connect Wireless. All right, Mark Persons, we're going to wrap the show up with an interesting comment. I'm going to be seeing you in Madison, Wisconsin. I don't think you're going to give me a hug there. You're going to stay separated, right?
We need to do that social distancing thing even now. And by the way, that's one of the best conferences around, regional conferences for broadcast engineers, called the Broadcasters Clinic in mid-October sometime.
And it's not just the beer and the cheese curds that make it the best conference.
It's just hobnobbing with a lot of people using social distancing, I'm told.
All right, now tell me about what's the rule that I got to follow when I get to Madison?
Well, in Minnesota, we keep ourselves apart by one large walleye. Everyone knows how big a walleye fish is in Minnesota, so we stay that far apart.
I have no idea how big a walleye is.
Well, in Minnesota, you do. You see, but what about in Nashville? What do you do there?
I think in Nashville, it's probably one guitar apart.
Well, that's about right. I would say that's similar. Yeah.
That's probably 4 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but in Madison, that's Wisconsin, you understand.
Yeah.
And this is the dairy state. So I understand that we're to stay one cow apart in Madison.
That could be a little far. That could be 8 feet.
One cow apart. Good grief.
Oh my gosh. All right. Mark, it's been great catching up with you. I appreciate you retired. You're still having a big effect on the industry and encouraging and enlightening a lot of folks.
I don't know what I'd do without it. Broadcasting's been my life, so there's no truly turning it off, except I'm just not being paid. But it's okay. I'm okay with that.
Well, I think you were responsible with your money while you were working.
Well, we tried to do that, and now we have enough so that it's working out for us.
How you doing, Mark and Paula? Well, we're comfortable. We're comfortable. Hey, would you, after the show, would you do me a favor and give Paula a little hug for me?
Oh, okay. I'll do that.
All right. I'd appreciate it very much. All right, Mark, thanks for being with us, and I really appreciate your participation. Please keep writing, and we'll have you back again on the show, okay?
Thank you. I look forward to it.
All right. Mark Persons has been our guest. He does mentoring. He's been doing mentoring since before it was cool, and wrote an article recently. It appeared in the July 25th Radio World magazine. You might want to check that out. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. Hey, thanks for joining us on This Week in Radio Tech. We really appreciate it very much. We got more good shows coming up this month, next month as well. And thanks to all our sponsors. Be sure you pay attention to them. Nautel and Angry Audio, Max Connect Wireless, Broadcast Bionics, and Broadcasters General Store. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.